Hello, this is Catherine Jelinek with the Skinny Platform, here to do a sit down with Dan Heuertz. And this sit down is on your recently almost to be released book, The
Yep.
Noisy Head,
hmm
which I have read, and it is a fantastic story. So today we're going to dive into that story and hear it from you in your voice. So, Dan, just want to welcome you here.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. You know how much I love spending time with you, and having a sit down with you is absolutely highlight of my day.
I love that. Thank you. Likewise. We're going to ask two standard questions as we begin these sit downs. And so, that first question, especially to be able to use to kind of understand the book as we begin, why did you write this book?
That's like a 10-year long answer to get to the truth of it. Um, all right. So, why? Um, I believed for a long time that I was someone that had something to say that I wanted to share with others. I didn't always know how important it was. I think a lot of that probably led from way back when, lack of confidence, things like that, that I wasn't really sure if I was worthy or if I was worth, really listening to. So,
Hmm.
that whole head trash, I call it the swirl, that whole swirl you get yourself into definitely played a part of it. And um, And I've been really good in my life at what I call half commits. So I'm kind of half in, half out.
Hmm.
And I half committed to writing a book because, as far as I knew, that was how, when you had something to say, that's how you said it. And that half commit led to 10 years of procrastination, kicking the can, avoiding the hard work. There's a long list of descriptions you could give it. Um, and I had a health scare a couple years ago that grabbed me by the shirt and said, "You need to pay attention that you have one life, life is finite. And if, if you're going to live a life without regret, you better stop the half commits."
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of deep work done on, do what do I really want to commit to? I call it there's this great question. This gentleman by the name of Don Tinney, um, he says, "What do you want?" And you go to work on that. And then he'll hit you with, so that's the right hand uppercut. Then he'll knock you out with the left hand cross and says, "What do you really want?"
Hmm.
And so a lot of work to answer those real simple questions,
Yeah.
tough, deep work. And what I wanted to do is to fully commit to few things and stop the half commits. And so that was part of it. And the last part, which ties in the health scare, there's this one of the most moving, most personal things that ever happened to me in my life as I was getting prepared for a big and scary surgery. That went very well, by the way. I ended up on the good side of it.
Okay.
Um, I was in this MRI, and it was a 45-minute long one, which is just brutal. And in it, I got very emotional for whatever reason. Life was pretty tough because this autoimmune disease, myasthenia gravis, got the best of me at the time. And I got done with it, the MRI. I asked the MRI technician, this very nice lady, if I could have a pen and paper. And she saw me all emotional and this kind of this big mess, couldn't walk, could barely talk, all these other things. She gave me a Sharpie and a sheet of printer paper from her printer. And I sat there and if I still have the paper, but if I looked at it, I would imagine there's about 40 tear marks all over the paper because
Oh.
it was just pouring out of me. And I wrote 2 words on the piece of paper. Actually, I should have brought it. And all I wrote was do more. And I was like, what the heck is this do more thing? And so next week, I have this very scary surgery, 6.5+ hours, cardiac ICU,
Wow.
and I'm processing life. That's when it
Hmm.
hits me. I have one life. Life is finite. That's when I get clarity on that. And then I'm still wrestling with this thing, this do more thing. And I've been for 10, 12 years been defining my purpose as do good things with good people. I know exactly what it means to me, how much it empowers me, how much clarity it has given me in the world.
Mm.
There's like a great example is right here, right now with you and me. It's because I'm kind of a dick about it. I really only wanted to do good things with good people because life is short and
Oh.
finite. But it hit me 2 days after the surgery. I'm in the hospital room, and it was do more good things with good people. And the second those two pieces clicked together, a fire inside of me lit like I had not been lit up for in decades as an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
And that made me get after answering those questions. What do I want? What do I really want? In a way that was no longer kind of scratch the surface, but I'm going to get really to the bottom of it.
I love
And
that.
I got to the bottom of it. And part of it was get rid of the half commits. Either I was going to figure out how to write this book or stop, and which was a viable option at the time.
Hmm.
And I committed to it. And the byproduct is with a lot of work and a lot of trials and tribulations, whatever you want to call it, but fits and starts. Um, we got here. I mean, that's the real truth of why.
Yeah. In writing a book, you've now co-founded a company with your son
Yeah,
to help
super cool.
entrepreneurs
Yeah,
unlock those stories so they can write books. So you didn't just write a book, you started a platform. I feel
well,
like that's very Dan.
true that, and do more.
Yeah.
Right? It's do more. That part was the unintended beauty of what has happened is co-founding it with my son Ben. Even us reconnecting on this level has
Yeah.
been so cool, and all that is just absolutely keeps that fire burning around that do more piece. And if I think about it too much, it really moves me in a very emotional way because it feels like because I got rid of the half commits
Hmm.
and committed to less, but to do more, feels
Yeah.
so much more fulfilling to do it that way.
It's liberating.
Yeah, yeah, right. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just asked, why did you write this book? And what I'm hearing you share is like why you're even compelled to share your stories, and well, a much bigger why than even just the why for the Noisy Head book.
Yeah.
But specifically knowing that like we can use this clip with Amazon, and um, why did you write the Noisy Head?
So the one thing I recognize, it really fits with what I was just talking about. If I'm going to commit to fewer things and do more, I'm tired of fighting that noise.
Yeah.
And it's there. I mean, I've been in entrepreneurs organization for 25 years. Been Junto, as you and I have that past relationship, not only EO but YPO and all these other organizations that I've been a part of. Big part of the EOS community, and we're all fighting that same noise. I do think it's unique and different for most folks. They have their own noise. Um, But if I'm going to commit and do more, I've got to manage the noise. And it was this very unique experience that I had. I mean, I don't really even know the definition of epiphany, but
Mm,
when you do the work and you get such clarity out of something that you can't wait to share it with other folks, and then now tie together, do more good things with good people. Wow, if I share that real life experience, a couple simple tools, and put that into what we now call a skinny book, I think I'm living up to the do more piece of it.
absolutely. So, who should be reading this book, The Noisy Head? Who needs it?
Yeah, so I'm all things and all about entrepreneurs. It's all I know. I've been one certainly my entire adult life. I think probably well into my childhood as well. Just didn't, I can't, truthfully, I still can't spell the word entrepreneur. It's a T. I can't figure it out.
There's a lot of E's. That's all we need
It's
to
not
know.
easy. It's just not easy. But, when certainly second stage entrepreneurs, and what I mean by that is, and I'm sure it would help some startups, but the second stage entrepreneur is somebody who's more established, has additional revenue, usually people that they're employing, because your issues are different. Your sweat and payroll, things like that, as we all talk about. That is to me when the noise, to me the noise is always there, but it gets loud, and manage it becomes really important. So anyone that's a second stage entrepreneur for sure. If you're an EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, YPO, Young Presidents Organization, a lot of those people are my friends. Those are my brothers and sisters. Certainly them. EOS, all of us implementers out there. What a cool, great, loving community of wonderful people. I think I very much wrote it with them in mind. Teacher,
Hmm.
facilitator, coach is trickles through EOS. Um, so that I frankly think EOS clients. If you're out there slugging away in an entrepreneurial company, your own noise gets created too. And my big hope in the whole thing would be, I guess time will tell, but could it even transcend that and just help people, any person that feels a little stuck, and help get them unstuck? Boy, that would just be a super bonus if it would ever resonate with those folks.
Well, I can speak from my own experience. I loved reading your book. My husband loved reading your book. Neither of us fit into the second stage entrepreneur, classifications. Brad trades financial markets, and I'm more into startups and have got a few projects going on right now and also have young kids. So,
Yeah,
but what I'll tell you, your book does for even those of us who aren't exactly who the book is written for, um, it creates clarity. Even if there isn't a whole ton of noise, there's still always additional things that maybe don't need as much attention as they're getting. And I think
yeah,
your book allows a lot of, we'll get into this, but your superpower as a framer in creating frameworks and helping people see things clearer by framing them.
yeah,
This book creates a lot of clarity both from hearing your story and then seeing how you worked with the noise in your head and created these frames
yeah.
to produce more clarity and simplicity.
So if that resonated, I figured you were really biased towards me. So I was,
I am.
I
It's
know,
true.
but the fact I told you when you read it, you gave me that feedback. It meant so much to me. It really did.
Thank you. Well, let's dive in.
Let's do
What
it.
is the noisy head about?
So it's really about an experience share. I think that's worth. I'll hit it quick. I can definitely go deep at times, but most of the time. But you know, we're going to talk about noisy head, but I want to spend just a moment on the skinny, because when we're back to your question of even why. So in the beginning, the why was I didn't want to write another business book. That's what I first started out to do. And that was just totally uninteresting to me. And I now know that's what created 10 years of kicking the can.
Yeah.
When I did commit, I was still committed in my head at that moment to a big traditional business book. And then as I got into it more, I just couldn't do it. And I figured out, okay, that's what's blocking me is here I'm saying I'm going to do something I don't want to do.
Ugh.
So then I started calling it an unbook, a little book. I was doing anything but trying to call it a traditional business book. And one day out of my mouth, I just said, I just want to give people the skinny on this. And the skinny is an experience share. So an authentic experience share. So it really happened.
Yeah.
Nothing. Then there's my theory that I created in a classroom that I'm just trying to
Right.
project. And even the framework, me and Dr. Dino Signori, some of it he had through his training as an organizational psychologist. He's very trained in this. Some of it he trusted me, I trusted him, and we just went for it and created the solution to how to calm your noisy head. So that's kind of a little bit of the skinny, but then also the segue to noisy head at the same time.
Well, that's perfect. Because another question that we want to always ask our authors in the sit down is what was their motivation to write a skinny specifically? But yours wasn't just, yours was the motivation to create the skinny.
Right.
Why were you motivated to create this different classification of book? And I
I
think it
think
ties
I
right
have a,
in.
you know, I think business books are awful.
Yeah.
I don't think they deliver the value that they once did. I used to devour them. I couldn't read the next, have to read. Um, I think there's very few that pierce through that are interesting. If you ever watched NBA basketball, it's like they have the whole game scripted on
Mm.
exactly how they're going to play it, and then uh, and that's how business books started feeling to me. The predictability of it just became boring, and thus trying to come up with something different where it's not boring. It's going to get to the point real quick. Let's have it be authentic, and let's have it something where you can get takeaway and is hopefully in one read. Man, if we could do that. So that was, I guess that's my answer on that front.
Yes, it is. And just speaking from the standpoint of the reader, I didn't even intend to read your book when I sat down and opened it. And I
Okay.
was reading the digital version. I just sat down. I was like, okay, let's open this and see what's going on inside this book. And then, 50 minutes later, which I know someone could definitely read it faster, but I was really kind of soaking it in and taking notes and rereading things. And 50 minutes later, it was done. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I just, read your book. And that was fantastic. And it pulled me in. And I think that that's the biggest thing about the experience share focused books, the skinny, is this is really the compelling part, the reason why we start a business book and love it and hear the compelling beginning. And then the middle can
Yeah.
drag on and then we stop reading.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that the noisy head and then the framework you've created for business books going forward through the skinny platform is the idea of the raw experience share and then how to help create a framework or at least the ease of implementation from those lessons learned.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's dive into this story. Tell me about the circumstances, the background, what was going on in your life at this time.
So
When, yeah.
a lot, always a lot. Being an entrepreneur, there's always a lot going on. But there was a series of, I would call them, well, I now know to call them crisis. I didn't know that at the time. Dr. Dino taught me to recognize that there is a difference, between these everyday little blips that we're overcoming, and then there are these major events. And he says sometimes you got to call them what they are. They're a crisis. So I had two. I think I was I was rather proud for a while that I had zero. So I
Mm,
thought. Truth is, I've had many. Now I know that.
mm,
But so I had these two crises in a very short amount of time. And if you're an entrepreneur, I call it inside outside. So my outside is confident. It projects all these great things. Life is great, aura on the outside, but the inside is scared to death, Dan, because I'm internalized those crises. I've recognized that I have very few people that know what I'm talking about to the level that they can have input to help me.
Mm.
And I've been very fortunate. I've had things like forums where I can talk to my forum about this stuff, but at the same time, it's still you going through it. It's really lonely at times. So those crises that were back to back in a very short amount of time, they had one unique similarity between the two, is that they were both very personal.
Okay.
And I never had of other crises and all the good and bad that has happened to me as an entrepreneur. So I've learned to use these words smartly and appropriately, but I never had it where I've actually felt violated before,
Mm.
on a level that was so personal. And so the fact that they happen in a very short amount of time and on a level that I've never experienced before is what confidence went out the window and the noise came running in. And that's what started it. And then, even though on the outside everything's fine, that noise inside kept getting louder. And that's where it started.
Yeah. So, what were those two circumstances, if you don't mind at least adding a little more context, if that's okay? And were you saying that they did cross that barrier that you hadn't crossed up to that point of feeling violated?
I've never experienced it except for those two cases. One is
Okay.
from, I would say, a mentor of mine, someone I really looked up to. We started doing a business venture together, and right when I helped position what we were working on for it to work in what I thought was going to be our favor,
Mm.
I was out, and including having to sign a very tough, I thought, wrong agreement of what I could say and can't say. That's even why I'm a little bit measured now.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe, after all he and I had gone through, that it would lead to that.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to make a tough business decision. I get that, but that can be done in a certain way. It's
Mm.
another thing just to chop you out and never talk to you again as well.
Mm.
So that was tough. The other one was with, as you know, everybody kind of uses the expression of your right hand man. Uh, this was this was that environment. Individual lied, stole a considerable amount of money, misled many people, covered up tracks by more lying and deceiving. Not only me, but I actually know the number, 64 other people.
Wow.
And yeah, not a small thing. And disappeared and
Ugh.
left a big, huge mess to try to mop up. And I've never spoken to that person since. And it's the most violated I've felt. And so those two back to back is what created the noise.
Yeah, I can see that. And then in the book, you reference that COVID happened right on the heels of that as well.
Or it just happened to be there. I would say COVID itself, I know some people had a adverse reaction to COVID and loneliness and things like that. That part of it did not hit me the wrong way.
Mm.
But so you get rocked once, you get rocked twice, you're barely coming out of it, And then that happens.
Right.
And me trying to do the right thing was go help people. I've always been wired that way. So
Yeah.
I did these sessions with all my clients. I'd say 25 clients or something. So I had like 20 of them take me up on, let's just get together. Let's figure this out. Let's give you a short-term plan on how to navigate the next 30, 60, 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Then because I've been a long-term member of EO, I offered it to all the EO people. I got like 25 more from there. So now I'm doing 8, 10 of these a week
Wow.
for, now I'm on 1, 2 months. I got YPO buddies coming. All these people started coming and say, yeah, we could use a little help. I was doing it all for free. I was
Oh,
just literally
wow.
100% pure help.
Okay.
So then you throw that in, all of a sudden the weight of all that
Yeah.
started coming on me too. It, and usually I can handle it, but it was those combination of those things.
Right.
Again, not so much specific to COVID, but more of just seeing how scared people were, how much fear there was, uncertainty. And I'm just wired that I care enough that I just can't flip the switch on and off. Even when
Yeah.
I say goodbye and thank you, it's still hanging with me. So that's how that wove in as well.
Yeah. That's a lot of heavy emotional pressure, like
Yeah,
additional weight. Just it sounds like so many situations where the floor fell out in a way that, like, this has never happened before. This has never happened to Dan or in Dan's life or in Dan's businesses. And then this has never happened in the world before and to all of your
exactly.
clients. And
And we added this little piece into Noisy Head just because it's a nice little exercise or framework. We call it controllable, uncontrollable. So that's all I was doing with these folks. Tell me everything that's in your control, everything that's not in your control. And we get the whole team on it. Okay, do we agree these are what's in your control? We're very specific about it. And then what's not in your control? You don't have control over COVID itself. You don't have control over what the government's going to do next. You don't, all these other things. You don't have control over the media. And so we would create these lists, and then we say, okay, we've got it now. What's in your control? What's not? And then I would say, now we're going to just 100% stop talking about what's out of your control. Taking all that energy that was put into a swirl and take all that energy into what you can control, because then we got a shot at getting ourselves out of whatever we're in. And that was what I was doing for these clients. And they're,
right.
and okay, we're doing 30, 60, 90, just little things, but let's go. If it's in our control, let's get started on that stuff. Because, man, were people swirling.
Right.
So looking back later, it's probably some of the best work I've done. But it was just, again, those combination of all those things that was, and here I am helping them and making it worse on me. It was just
Right.
kind of how it all, I guess, came together.
Yeah. You got the cosmic swirl, like everybody else is
Exactly.
compounding on top of yours.
Yes, exactly.
And you reference the loss of compartmentalization,
Oh,
not being able to compartmentalize because it all became too much, which I think we can all understand. And you're more of an empath. You feel what other people are feeling. So that load got heavier and heavier and heavier, and you already had big stuff of your own. Yeah. So speak to the loss of being able to compartmentalize.
so I fancied myself as a master at compartmentalizing. Um, to me, I look at entrepreneurs as this compartmentalization, but I liken it to hats. So I have my entrepreneur hat, CEO hat, salesperson hat, and I'm flipping hats on and off throughout the day. And so I've had to compartmentalize my whole life. Okay, let's talk about this in its compartment. Now we got to put that to the side because I got to move on to the next thing. Let's talk about that. Okay, that goes here on the shelf. All these different compartments. It's like an essential survival skill for
Mm,
entrepreneurs. So really good at it. And then when the swirl started, and then all these confluences of events started happening. I I remember one time I was with a client getting paid. So I get paid to pay intense attention to the words and also what the words that aren't being spoken and pull that out of
Mm.
people. And I was at the board and I don't even know how long it was. It was 2 or 3 minutes. They had a whole conversation. I was standing there in front of them and acting like I was paying attention, but I was zero presence. And then that repeated itself a few times. I remember one time being at the board writing, and is like I was like a podcast where you can just freeze. I was just, and then they're like, Dan, it's almost like a movie where they want to poke you and say, wake up,
Hmm.
because all that stuff. I called it like this force. There was like this force that was pushing on me, and it was just like you have lost your capacity to compartmentalize. You've lost your capacity to manage these confluence of events like you'd always been able to manage in the past. And it's just all that came together. And then it was like, okay, this noise is now crippling me or creating some form of paralysis. Um, so I had to get solving it. I did start talking to like my EO forum and some trusted friends from Junto days, and then also that's when I went to Dr. Dino Signori,
Yes.
and and I love the guy, and we have a long term relationship, and without hesitation, he's like, "Let's go, let's
Mm.
get this thing sorted out," and it I like using the word two words a lot: magical and remarkable, and what we did together was both.
That's fantastic. You said magical and remarkable, but then let's weave in that Junto emotion wheel and talk a little bit more about
You
Dino.
mean the Hugo emotion wheel?
Beautiful. Thank you. That's
Yes.
awesome. But just so how are you feeling when you came to Dino? You know, I mean, I think we all we're hearing it, but if you were to assign actual words to it.
Yeah. So I'm looking in the Huto emotion wheel. Uh, I don't know if I'm strong enough to use the word terrified, but definitely scared, 100% fear based.
Uh-oh, I can't hear you, Dan.
And the word here that really resonates with me is insecure. And
Mm,
I now, that combination, I know that's when I lack confidence. So when I speak throughout the book about this losing your confidence, and I don't know if you've ever lost your confidence,
for
but
sure.
it is that stuff rocks you to the core. Because at first you think it's the situation, whatever that is, that's rocking your confidence. Then you wonder if it's you. I mean, the real you, and that's. Uh, I didn't know that confidence was so fleeting. Because remember,
Mm,
my inside outside, I've always been able to manage the outside. Oh, come off confidence. And the inside, I
hmm.
might have these emotions we were just speaking to. But this time it was inside and outside. It had the best of me.
Yeah. To just drill down a little more into that, what do you mean when you say confidence?
So, I don't know if I have a pure answer for it because for me, it's more of just an experience that I had. But my confidence in, at that time, I lost it. I've never not trusted people before.
Hmm.
And then I had these two people violate me. And was I going to end up being a person that was going to go through life no longer trusting people?
Yeah.
So I always think trust is given, or I think people either give trust or they have to earn trust. And
Mm,
I give trust. And I couldn't imagine the world not with me in the world through my lens of operating that way. I didn't want to have to go through the world where everyone had to earn my trust all the time.
Yeah.
It's not where I wanted my energy to go. And frankly, I didn't even know how to operate like that in the world. So that was part of it. But when you get hit from all these different angles, so the real personal, the inside confidence, when am I the issue? Am I doing something wrong? All those huge question marks just get you going, and it doesn't end. It just gets you, I call it the swirl. You just get caught in that swirl of, probably the word doubt is in there.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I don't lack confidence. I don't. And I'm glad I don't. But at this time, when you're no longer able to project it or believe it, it's that's my, hopefully a clear definition, but that's just how I looked at it, because it was just what was true at that time.
Well, what I'm hearing too is um, it challenged your concept of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thank you. Those are clear words. Thank you.
it sounds like it also challenged your concept of the world.
I never imagined those people doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were sitting with yourself in a way, asking the question, am I going to close because of these experiences? Am I going
Yeah.
to project this meeting onto my experiences moving forward?
Yeah. And then that's not me.
Yeah.
Do I need to all of a sudden become something that I'm not? Or do I need to become something I'm not?
Right. And so enter Dino.
Thank you, Dino.
And what was the first, where did it begin with you both working together?
So he'd been my coach for a while. We've known each other for a long time, for 20-ish years. I've got to know him through the Edward Lowe Foundation, and then him being a private coach as well. What I like about him is he's an academic, but he's not an academic. I mean, he's clearly book smart. You don't become a PhD unless you're book smart.
Right.
But he communicates in such a way that an entrepreneur is like, oh, I totally get where you're coming from. Even though it's a lot of times it's very sophisticated concepts and frameworks, and what he's referencing is, there's a lot to it. He just makes it totally consumable. And I was like, and plus I just like the guy. He's a good person. And so, yes, we had a business relationship as a coach and a coachee, but we also had a friendship, which is how I prefer to even do business anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Combining those two. But he came into the picture because of our long relationship. We'd already been working together, but we kind of were on a track of doing some other stuff, and it was a quick shift, and he didn't hesitate. Boom, just went right there with me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What did he guide you into first with your noisy head?
Yeah. One of the challenges, the way my brain works is, I can usually, I remember the highlights, not always the depth of the details. And then some areas I'll hit that one thing and just be able to go a mile deep. But so first of all, I say this because I love him. He knows this to be true. It's in the book. When I MF someone,
Yeah.
that's actually meaning I'm really enjoying what they're doing. You MFer, because they are making me work. They're making me think and be different.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds maybe contrary to some folks, but to me, it's like my highest praise
I love
that,
it.
yeah. And he can definitely get me, and I love him, that MFer. But, so, he just gave me a different way of looking at it that I needed. And his first thing he said is like, what are all your inputs? What the heck are you talking about? This whole thing is always confusing. We have this little tension, this love tension between the two of us, almost friction.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, write down all your inputs. And I was like, what's an input? All that stuff. And he's like, just what are all your inputs? What do you absorb every day? What's creating the noise?
Mm-hmm.
Started writing. Once I clicked on what it meant, I think it was 64 things, 63 or 64 things I should know. It's in the book. And you'll know over time that I'm a rounder. I'm close enough. So I wrote down all these things, and it was just things like Squawk Box in the morning. It was Facebook. It was my clients. They were all inputs to what I was processing and consuming on a regular basis. And so that's where we got started. And so he's like pen and paper, wrote it all down. He's like, just sit on it for a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw was a lot of it, I just naturally went on to, I cleaned it up, like tightened it up. I was like, well, here's really the core ones. These other ones are, yeah, they're there, but they're pretty small. So I wanted to see what the picture looked like on the court. Still was 31 things. And I was even filtering out like these are 31 things every day for sure. And then all the other extras that just are in there. And so that's where it got started. I was like, so to me, was that the exercise? Of course, he's always got more up his sleeve, but that's where we got started. And I'll tell you, just even that simple thing, it was just, it gives you a little bit of light in there that, oh, yeah, I am processing a lot of stuff.
Oh, Dan, I just find it an interesting parallel that what he did with you, which created such an aha, was what you were already doing with your clients.
Yeah.
Was helping
Yeah.
them as a company get down all the noise that was causing their overwhelm. And then it was the power of someone else asking that question to you personally and having you do the dump, right?
Yeah. The brain dump, drain the brain.
Yeah. And that was
Yeah.
where it
That's a
started.
great acknowledgement. Me being a facilitator, recognizing the value that I bring to my clients is that they can't get there on their own. Without Dino, I would have never got there on my own.
Right. So we need somebody to help
Yeah.
facilitate that and then also hold up that mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So you have your inputs and you have
Yep.
your 31 or so.
Yep. Or
And
so.
then
I like that. Or so.
and then where from there? What else happened in your experience or what else did Dino lead
Yeah.
you into?
So he then, probably MF or number 7 or 8 at this time now. We're working down our list.
Yeah.
He's saying, okay, so you got the inputs, that's great. What's valuable to you? So he wanted to know my resources. And I was like, resources? He's like, yeah, what do you put value on? What are those resources? So, things like, I could tell you some of the things. So like my EO forum, a very valuable resource for me. I'm in Strategic Coach. So some of the stuff Strategic Coach puts out, a bunch of stuff they put out. I'm an EOS implementer, so the community is just fantastic. So those became resources. Like most things, you get a long list in the beginning and then you whittle it down. I went from, I don't remember the exact numbers of resources, but I landed on 8 pretty quickly. I think today I'm at 11. Also recognize they do change over time.
Yeah.
Always
Yeah.
it's not always a fixed thing. But and what he wanted to, so he, get that list going. What are the resources? So okay, I created the resources. Then he goes, okay, what are the valuable ones? So these little nuanced micro click questions. And he goes, so what he meant by that is, what are your go-tos when you're facilitating you're with your clients? What are you constantly going to? And I was like, okay, well, obviously I'm an EOS implementer, so EOS stuff, that's high on the list.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things I never gave myself credit for is all my years of being an entrepreneur, how valuable that was to my clients. Because they're throwing all these things at me. Half this, more than that, 60, 70, 80% stuff I've had some experience with, or 25 years of being in forum, my forum mates have gone through it. So I have all these intimate experiences of helping other people through the issue. All of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden, it became really clear to me, wow, I am a wealth of a resource. I just needed to acknowledge these valuable resources that I did have that I gave myself zero credit for up until that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Question is, so was this where you're looking at your inputs and you had to identify which from that group of 31 or so
Yeah.
were resources? Is that
Yeah.
what I'm getting?
Yeah.
So is the definition of resource mean that like they are offering more to you than you're having to give? Or what was that definition of resource? How did you qualify it as a resource?
Yeah. So this is where I wish Dino was on here right now because he'd give you a very PhD definition of it.
Yeah.
Um, so the definition of resource is simply what I went to when I was serving my client. So you almost have to take the input and put it to the side for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so you hit the brakes there for a second. This is where he yin and yangs you a little bit. Work this side, stop. Now go over here and do some work. Then you're going to stop. And then eventually they come together. So he had
Mm-hmm.
me stop on the input side, and now he's working me over on the resource side. Because ultimately, then we put a grid out there. Oh, here's your resources, here's your inputs, which ones are actually valued. You start pushing those against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that was ultimately the exercise or the framework that we worked through. So on the resource side, what do you go to? So what are your go-to resources when you're serving your clients?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so here, I was actually looking for them. I was flipping through the book real quick. I want to give you the exact list because I think we need them in the room right now.
Okay.
So my original list was this. So EOS Worldwide, my clients, oh my God, what a resource. Because I learned from one, we can apply it to another and vice versa. My entrepreneurial experiences, which I already referenced, my EO forum, EO as a whole, just as an organization, huge wealth. Other EOS implementers, so people that are professional facilitators like me, Dr. Dino, and I even on this list I put Ramen on there from because at that time I was really enjoying Ramen and I's relationship. We did these regular check-ins, and as he was going through a lot at that time with all the transition, which
Mm-hmm.
um, it just felt really good to be talking to him at that time. So it was a valuable resource, and because we both kind of geeks for this stuff, we'd be dropping nuggets with each other about things, and I just got a lot of value out of that.
That's awesome. I heard you mention the word wealth, and I think that that actually applies to this list. This list is almost that list of, when you're thinking about resources, I'm hearing you tell me, when someone's doing this exercise, okay, you leave your inputs over there. Now let's think about resources separately.
Yep.
Um, you know, Beyond money, where are you wealthy?
Right. Oh, yeah, I get you.
Where's the richness, like, because these things are like, money can't buy your
No
entrepreneurial
doubt.
experience, money can't buy the valuable connections you have in EO and the trust that you have with your clients in the EOS community. And so it's kind of like the real wealth that your life is sitting on top of.
I didn't think about it till right now, but so using the wealth is what's triggering me.
Hmm.
And think of all the financial planning we do in our world.
Yeah.
This noisy head, in a little bit, I see some parallels there. But in financial planning, and think about it, we're all working, we're all trying to accumulate wealth, accumulation of wealth.
Hmm.
If we look this in that same context, which I really appreciate you bringing that up, there is a wealth here. I just, it's super interesting to me you just said that, because I'm feeling a little wealthier than I did just a minute ago.
Well, and even if we do think about wealth in the normal context,
Yeah.
um, the money that you're generating through client work, I mean, is an indirect result of those things in your resource list.
Yeah. I mean, this is more modern or current times, but I always look at when somebody refers you as the ultimate conveyance of trust. If someone's going to take the risk and refer you to somebody else, usually one of
Right.
their peers, that's a pretty serious thing if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
most people I know, including myself, I do not take that lightly. I won't refer you if I don't can't trust that you're going to do the thing that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And of my business, I don't know the exact numbers. Certainly, a few have come from other sources, but 80+% all referrals. I don't have a business card. I don't have a website. I don't have a nothing. And I mean, it's really hitting me at this moment in time is that it's due to that wealth of these valuable resources. Yeah,
Right.
interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You're the one who said the word. um, so let's weave back into where you were at the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Noisy head, you're getting into the deep work with Dino. He's
Yep.
asking you your challenging questions that
Yep.
make you want to call him all sorts of names, you
Yep.
know?
Yep. Yep.
Um, where next in this process? You listed your resources and highlighted the valuable ones.
Yeah. So if you look at it as a grid, oh, so next, so stop there. So yin and yang, which is a common practice, learned a very effective technique of facilitation as well,
Hmm.
is what are your capabilities
I love this.
in order to do your job? And so MF for number 42, because I just didn't understand the word. And I never thought of myself as labeling myself with a capability. Just
Hmm.
was really awkward for me. And even to this day, it still is awkward. Um, but, part of this was written with EOS implementers in mind. And it's very common in our community to say teacher, facilitator, coach, because we're doing all three of those things, which anyone does the coaching work that we do, not just EOS, but other folks as well. You're toggling between those. It's almost like I was saying with the entrepreneur changing the hats. You're changing those hats at all time.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seemed like the right place to start. It was something I was currently doing, developing my practice, and um, and frankly, at the time, because again, remember I was rocked at this time, confidence was low, things like that. I I think I know it now. I didn't know it then, but I needed a safe place also to start. And so that felt safe. And I'd been espousing those words for a long time. And so I'm like, okay, let's start here. This is a safe and right place to start. So that's where I started. It wasn't really more than that. I just said, we're going to get started there.
With the words teacher, facilitator, coach.
Yeah. Yep. And then what I did was just simple grid. I mean, it's a world's simplest grid. Resources on one side, teacher, facilitator, coach. And then for each one of my 8 resources, I just put a little check mark in did that resource, was it valuable when I was facilitating, when I was teaching, when I was coaching? Either got a check mark or I didn't. It was either a hell yes or it was a no. And that created the first grid. And frankly, I could have stopped right there. It was good. I was feeling better than I had felt in quite some time. And what I know now is this goes back to that confidence. I just needed something to kind of put that floor back under my feet
Yeah.
and reset myself. I think the beauty of me is I keep going and I know I'm resilient that way, but uh, I don't know. It strikes me in a lot of different ways when I think how important it was that I just got that floor. And
Yeah.
I've got something now. I've got something to build on. Super important to reestablishing my confidence.
Let's take an emotion wheel pause on that moment. When
All
you
right.
established the floor again, I can just feel that sigh of relief and that
Oof.
exhale. But what words would you put to that?
There's a couple words on here I've always wanted to use.
Yeah, there's some really interesting ones, aren't there?
That triumphant. I've never been triumphant. I'm going to have to work
Hmm.
that into my life. The word that hit me is interesting. The first word that hit me, I'm going to stick to it, but content. When you need that floor to get back underneath your feet and you don't know how much you need it, and then it's there. uh, I just feel a little bit of contentment. The other thing that I guess I'm going to say, because it's I can't quit looking at it, is I've always been a very optimistic person. And when you lose your confidence, your optimism is one of the first things to go. And what I've known about myself for a long time, so the outside voice, is I can always speak optimistically. But during that time, I lost that ability to speak without being optimistic or with
Mm.
optimism. So that, knowing that that was coming back, because that's the real me, and that's important to me, to I've identified with for a long time. That floor getting built. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of contentment here. I'm feeling good, better about myself. And then, oh, good, I'm getting my optimism back. These are all the
Mm.
little lights in my tunnel that were helping me get through this dark spot.
Was it identifying yourself as the facilitator, coach, and teacher that built the floor? What was it that actually gave you the emotional experience of the floor?
I think it's a combination of both. The simplicity of this is what I do, facilitator. I'm a
Okay.
facilitator. I'm a teacher. I do coach. I do those things. I know that. And I just needed it simple at the time. And
Hmm.
then that simple little resource thing that, man, I got it.
Right.
There they are right next to each other. A couple little check marks and it just became a
Yeah.
clear picture.
So to just put different words to it, those words of your capabilities, there were, this is my value, like the
Hmm.
floor. I indeed have this value.
Yeah.
And then there's these things that are supporting it.
Yeah.
There's stuff behind me,
Yeah.
people and things behind me. To just kind of get into a word that you said at the very beginning of this
Okay.
discussion, you mentioned the word worthy. And I think that that's probably going to tie into, I know, things that come later in the discussion about other realizations you had. Um, but did the betrayals that you experienced, did that call your worthiness into question? Was that a
Oh,
part of the
100%.
swirl?
100%. Yeah. 100%. You,
Yeah.
you start questioning everything about yourself.
Yeah.
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 100%.
And those close people and connections causing that ripple effect. Like, do I need to question everything?
Yeah. And the length of that ripple is interesting too. It just doesn't, it's not a few, it keeps going.
Right. But this process with Dino interrupted the ripple and allowed
Yep.
it to not become something that, this could be a harsh word, but poisoned, you
Yeah.
know, future
Fair word.
experiences.
Yeah. Fair word though.
Yeah. But then here you are, finding your ground, realizing, look, I am this, I am this, I am this. And there's
Yep.
people and things behind me of value that I love and I respect. And so from there, I know that guide me next in the process. I know there were other words, other
Yeah.
capabilities that came as
So
ahas.
I know we've been talking about ramen, so I should have put it in noisy head. I don't know why I did not, but so I wrote in there that I was hiking with a friend or a buddy. Well, that was ramen. We were hiking the Mississippi Palisades,
Mm.
and we're just hanging out, which we do. We love going on these hikes, being in nature, just talking about stuff. And it was that drive after leaving ramen. I was in my car going, I'm starting to feel good about myself. The inside outside voice were starting to level up, and shoot a call off to Dino just on the fly. He had no reason to pick up, but he did. And I knew there was something missing. And something about the combination of the work I already did, starting to get some of that optimism back, that whole floor thing we were just talking about, all those things being there, that I knew that, and I didn't know how to say it. Matter of fact, the word was so awkward for me to say that I was a framer.
Mm.
And he's saying, well, what's that? And then I said, I love working with frameworks and I love creating them. And I said, the way when people talk to me, it's like the matrix in my head is breaks into its certain little uh, proper places in the world, or at least in my
Mm.
mind. And and I think it's because he does know me well, and he knew that I didn't just come up with it on the fly, that I was doing the work, that he said, yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, it wasn't like, what are you talking about, or pushing back on me. Um, he recognized me for who I am and said, I trust this guy. And if he's
Mm.
saying it's true, then let's work with it. So we added framer. So it's a facilitator, teacher, coach, framer. And I was ecstatic that that felt right.
Yeah.
So that was just a whole another level for me of gaining that confidence back. All these things were starting to feel really, really good to me now.
Hmm.
And then which again I think was a good call by Dino. He said, like, just sit on it a little bit now. Don't force it. And I've learned this over time. There's something about doing the work and leaving the work and then coming back to it. And I've developed that skill. I haven't always had that skill, but I can do
Hmm.
it now. And I it's like my favorite way to do it now, because then I usually mean it versus just do it in the moment and just kind of stick something on the wall for the moment.
Right.
And so I'm now looking through my list. I expanded my list from that original list we went through on the valuable resources. I added strategic coach, and uh, Dan Sullivan to the list, who created Strategic Coach. That day, the very first, I think it's the only podcast I've ever listened to of his. I'm a huge
Uh,
fan of Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan. And that day they were talking about, are you a simplifier, or are you a multiplier? And they walked through the definition of it. And and I already knew the answer, but just hearing them listen to it. And I was like, look at that. The first time I go to my valuable resource, it's telling me don't ignore the fact. You can't make this up. The first and only podcast I listened to of his, it's telling me you have to make a choice. Are you going to be a simplifier, or are you a multiplier? You got to choose. And then you got to commit to being 100% of one of them. Because if you don't, you're a complicator.
can you give us the definitions of those two? So, in
Yeah,
case our listeners haven't heard
go
of them.
go to Strategic Coach and download Simplifier Multiplier Framework, and it will do a better job than I'm going to do now. But here's my definition. So when two people look at the exact same situation, no difference. So me, a multiplier looking at this situation, or a simplifier looking at the exact same situation. The simplifier looks at it and says, well, if I take this complexity out and get deeper into the root cause of this, and again shed away that complexity, that's which that's what I do. That's how they navigate, and that's how they see the world. I look at that exact same situation and say, wow, if we only do this, this, and this, look how we can multiply and make this thing even bigger and better for whatever we're doing. And it was 100% clear to me I'm a multiplier, always have been, can't help myself. I'm wired there. In Kobe, if you look at Quick Start, I'm an 8 out of 10. So I'm okay with innovation, taking risk, and uncertainty. All those things are naturally who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So the multiplier made sense. Where I got stuck for a minute was when they said you got to choose. So I'm like, wait a minute, but I have to simplify. I can't be the one just coming up with all kinds of stuff. We got to still do stuff and simplify. But when Sullivan put out there, well, if not, you're just adding complexity to things. I was like, you know what? I have been making it more complex.
Mm.
And I need to figure out and create the discipline around how to stay on my side of the fence and really master being a multiplier. And I still struggle with it, to be honest, at times. And I definitely do complicate things. But man, the awareness is greater than it's ever been. And I still got some work to do there, but I'm so content with the fact that I'm a facilitator, teacher, coach, framer, and multiplier.
Mm.
That's it. That is me. I am done and I am feeling complete.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Love to just highlight a little example of you being a multiplier where you go to write a book. You don't just write a book. You create a new classification of a book and you start a company that is a platform of doing that classification of books with your son.
Yes.
And so that's just an example of
That's
you
a
take your
multiplier.
experience and you expand it beyond,
Yeah.
way beyond.
Yeah.
Yes, to seeing
Yeah.
what's possible. I
Yeah.
find it interesting, though, too, just to comment that framer and multiplier sit there right next to each other. In a lot of ways, a framer could be seen as a simplifier, but
Totally.
it's different because you're actually helping take a lot of information and just place it appropriately. Can you speak to that for a second? The
Yeah,
difference for
for
you?
sure. No, I'm trying to. It's probably still a work in progress, but I'm really trying hard to always understand that relationship myself. But I think my brain is wrapped around it now. So the framer part to me, if I can create frameworks, both when I'm facilitating and for my own businesses, if I can create frameworks, a lot of time. So whoever you are, if you're a simplifier and I'm a multiplier, that framework's the exact same framework is going to resonate with you differently than it would me. And you're going to do the work to simplify it. I'm going to do the work to multiply. And then I believe those two things, usually opposing, yin and yang, if you will, you bring those two things together, you're going to get to a better outcome. I just truly believe it.
I just lost Dan's audio for a minute here.
What's that?
I lost your audio for a
Oh,
second, so I lost whatever you just said for the last
well, let's
20
go
seconds.
back and I'll see if I can repeat it.
Thank you.
All right. So we were talking about how framer and multiplier can be at odds with one another.
Yep.
All right. This would be an interesting test to see what I just said, how much it would match what I'm going to say now.
Sure.
But I believe the framework, if you're a simplifier or multiplier, it applies to both. If you're a simplifier, you're going to go at it from that simplifier mindset and do the work. Because I'm 100% multiplier, I'm going to take that same framework and think about how I can multiply this opportunity, whatever that is that we're working
Mm-hmm.
through. I've also learned, well, for me personally, I do need collaborators, and I prefer Well, it depends what I'm doing, but most of the time I prefer someone that's opposite of me, yin and yang effect. So if I'm multiplying, where's a simplifier? Because that tension, a positive tension between the two, is going to lead to a better outcome. Otherwise, I'll multiply us to the moon. And I think I'm actually helping the simplifier look at other possibilities and maybe having them open to experimentation. But that positive tension, man, that's the good stuff. So I think being a framer has helped me not only be a better multiplier, but it also helped me better appreciate the simplifiers.
I love that. And that you get to the healthy tension, especially within business relationships,
Yeah.
when you're kind of coming from complementing and also opposite, opposing superpowers.
Yep. Yeah, right. What they're doing is a superpower just like mine's a superpower. Why won't you figure out how to embrace that?
Truly. Okay, so then you've got your capabilities and you've got your valuable resources. And Dan, several years ago, is starting to feel a lot clearer and a
Yep.
lot more confident.
Yep.
And it sounds like a very steady, deep contentment is rising.
Fair.
And then you've continued this conversation with Dino, and I know that wasn't the total finality of this, the lessons from this book, from this chapter in your life.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes Dino wanted me to finish and get to what he called core competency. So, of these capabilities I have, there's really one that separates you from all other. So there's a little bit of a tension here. Part of where I was at was I felt so good, and now with hindsight, I needed to just feel good for a little while. I just needed that for just let me really absorb this again because it
Yeah.
all was gone. And so as he was pushing for me to get to my core competency, I really didn't want to go there.
Mm.
But there was this one time, this is one of those things that in your life you're going to look back and say, wow, this was a moment. I remember, well, we were in Michigan City, Indiana, beautiful house, we're on the beach. I'm so into this, what we're doing. I violate my own rule about no work during vacation. I didn't really consider this work. I've considered it working on my health as much as anything. And so I'm continuing to have these conversations. I almost can't put it down
Yeah.
in one sense. And at the same sense, I need just to absorb it all. So, these tensions are still there. But this specific moment, I'm engaged in the process. And we had this unique little thing happen that we asked a mentor of mine to get some input from my clients. And we were trying to figure out what they would say about me as what would be my core competency. So there was a series of questions. I don't know who the clients were. They never shared it with me. This is all set up with my assistant and my mentor. And through a very simple series of questions, 8 or 10 questions, 3 things became clear, and one was said 11 times. With the exact one word was said 11 times, 11 for 11. The others 2 were said in various ways, but they really were saying the same thing. They were just using sometimes different words or phrases. So the one thing that came out from just 11, so pretty small sample size, was that, that they all trusted me. So think about where you're at. You're searching for the floor. You're just rebuilding yourself. And to hear that anonymously And the one thing to come through above all else is that they trust you. Oh, super. I mean, just I couldn't tell you how important it was to hear that. So that happened. It still gets me to this very day. They said that I create a safe place, that they feel safe with me,
Hmm.
um, and that we have a genuine relationship. And some of that stuff I don't even know I was doing or providing, or it was just me. And yet here it is, these people who was clearly a one, two, three. It was clearly the themes were there. Even a couple of the other words were like, hey, you probably point it. That's what he told me later. Pointed to one of these three. It was pretty consistent. So as we were getting these results, this is back to the vacation. I was on that vacation. I was on the beach. It was windy as all get out that day. You know how you got to put your back to the wind. I've got my hoodie up. I have a towel over my head, trying to get the phone call in. And honest to God, my knees buckled as they're telling me this. I sat in the sand on the beach. My family's all around me, and I'm sitting there, and I said, and I remember interrupting him as we're kind of processing this whole thing. And I said, Dino, they let me in. They let me in. And I never acknowledged that until that moment in time.
Hmm.
But the combination of, I think, me starting to regain my confidence, some of these unique little insights I was getting along the way, the fact that I went beyond facilitator, teacher, coach, and knowing that it's true that I'm a framer and a multiplier, all that work, Dean will keep pushing me, and yet give me space. Me doing the work, uh, there's just the two biggest takeaways I got out of this was that they let me in was one. I to this day when I facilitate, I don't ever take it for granted. And two, I don't want to now let those people down in a way. So I'm always trying to make sure I'm honoring that insight. I really try hard to do that.
Hmm.
So that's what
Where,
happened on the beach that day.
yeah, where's that on the emotion wheel, Dan?
Yeah. I don't know,
Like,
but if it was a rating, it'd be like a 27 out of 10.
yeah, that's what I get.
Yeah. How about romantic?
I
Joking,
f-
joking,
no,
joking.
no,
Sorry.
but there's something about that. It
Oh,
swept you away.
it's
It,
true.
you were like in the moment so much that it knocked you off your feet.
It knocked me off my feet. It's funny how your eyes just fixate on these things sometimes. So a couple of them here that I just can't look away from. Uh, Warm-hearted, not a word that I'm really comfortable with, but I don't use a lot. I'm very comfortable with. I'm just not I don't use it a lot.
Hmm.
The, the after effect of this and the realization and the power that hit me, I think that helped me understand the word elated, because I don't know if I've ever let myself be elated. It just wasn't, I didn't see the reason for it almost. But when these things all came together and it's true just how it happened, how all the forces of the universe came to me by doing this work, I think I understand that.
Hmm.
Um, and just the simple word of delight, I'm just these little things of, well, it opened me up to delight in the work that I did. It hasn't been lost on me that if I hadn't done this, would I still be doing this? Because I'd lost my delight, if you will, if I didn't have the insight of that they trusted me, and I created these safe places for them, and they let me in. Is it all of a sudden just work then? I've never looked at this as, I mean, it's work, trust me, but I don't
Yeah.
look at it as work. I'm still convinced I'm the most fortunate person in the room every time I get to do it. I don't know. When you're in a bad space, you wonder what you'd still be doing if you would have stayed in that space.
But as you're speaking to in this, the value of actually journeying that full circle experience, you it's doubling down your love and delight for what you're doing even more is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
I'm
It brought
finding it,
joy back to it. Elated was the word that was triggering me.
yeah,
All of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't have to go grind it out. No, I get to do this. There's a
I
big
get to do
difference
it.
between the two.
Yeah, I get to do this. Something else that's fascinating is that trust that they have for you and that Dino, he's calling that your core competency. Is that correct?
Well, so the core competency also have to choose one of your capabilities and say above
Okay.
all else, you have to get to what's core above
Hmm.
all else.
And so was that one of the capabilities then?
Uh,
How does that weave
so
in?
yeah, so I kicked the can on this. I felt I was being unfair to myself to choose one of those five because the five felt so good to me.
Yeah.
It's almost like I didn't want to betray any the other four by choosing one of them because it just helped me get out of this where I was into this much better place. So I kicked the can to, and I know I did, and it felt incomplete, but at the time I didn't care because it just got me where I needed to go.
Yeah.
Um, but when
Can
I
I say a
went
word?
back to it and
Just a
started
quick.
actually writing Noisy Head, I said, okay,
Hmm.
I got to finish the work.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, my core competency is, I am an expert facilitator. Facilitation is what I do. Brings here Dino's criteria in order for it to be a core competency. I'll read these. So it has to be valuable. It must be valuable. Sorry, has to be rare. You have to have a historic head start. No one can catch you, is what he's trying to say. And you can't buy it off the shelf. You have to have all four, or it cannot even be in consideration as the one you're going to choose to be a core competency. So this got him like 7 or 8 MFers in a row because this was unfair, not kind or nice for him to do this to me. And that's probably why I kicked the can for a while. But when I got back at it, and I would tell you, sometimes you have to let it sit and come back to it. When I came back to it, it was actually reinvigorating. I recommitted to the work. And actually, I got there probably faster because it had time and didn't feel
Hmm.
forced. It was also
Hmm.
clear to me because I did the work leading up to it. And so two things came out of it. One I didn't expect, and the other one I expected. One became clear to me, which was I am a facilitator. I check all four of those boxes. I added to Dr. Dino's list of those four, and I said, it has to bring you joy. I just can't imagine being really great at something. Above all else, you got to choose one thing, and that thing not bring you joy. So I added a fifth to his criteria. I'm sure he probably MF'd me on that one. Uh, so back at you, Dino. But the one I didn't expect by going back and doing the work again, you can only get there because you do the work. Is I didn't expect to say out loud with clear acknowledgement, and I would say this really respectfully, people really need to hear this the right way. And I say it in Noisy Head about that I'm more than just my work.
Yeah.
So what that means, again, please hear this the right way, is that I'm more than just an EOS implementer. That's what I do. I'm very, very proud of it. I love doing it, hands down, hear it the right way. But I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a bunch of things. I'm not that one thing. And for me to have those two acknowledgments next to each other, that I am, when it comes to my core competency, when it relates to my work, I'm an expert facilitator, locked in, clear as a bell. But please, just like don't find me just as an EOS implementer or a professional facilitator. I'm more than that. And I think everyone else should be too. They should be more than just their work, because we are more than that. And so I just want that nuance to be heard the right way and respectfully. And that makes me feel whole.
That's wonderful. That's so deeply important. And I think the journey that you took through the experiences that you had that were the book Noisy Head, to just kind of put it into different words that I'm hearing, the person who you are that does instill so much trust in your clients so naturally and can, take them on a journey of deep work for their company, and they, put their hands in your hands and trust you for that journey. That's who you are. That's who you be. It's not what you do. That's how you emanate, and that being is the part that is worthy. That's the part that's all of the value and all of the doing is generated from that core, from that inner place. And that's who you are. That's what you felt on the beach, that moment where you realize they let me in. They inherently, naturally trust who I am. I don't have to do something to earn it. It's who I be that they trust. And I hear you with it's something I think a lot of us need to continue to feel for ourselves, but that what we do and the work we do, that's like the secondary effect of that inner part that you got to in this process, that who you be.
Right.
And that's so cool that you're able to, drill down into that with Dino's assistance.
I appreciate your words, though, because sometimes you get so in your own head and into, living this story, when others, like Dino did here and you're doing now, when you can hear them from others, especially now, as much work as we've done in this interview to put me back in that place, and then hear you say those with those words, they just mean more and provide even more clarity. I've done all this work so far, hearing it, you just providing those words to me, just super clarifying and empowering for me to hear.
Well, you are like one of the most wonderful people in my mind, Dan. So deserve it. The other thing I want to say, there's a few things that are popping up. I know we're closing in on our time, but that are thematic to what you shared in Noisy Head. This story and this experience for you began with an infraction and a betrayal of trust. And it actually concluded with you realizing that some of what you bring that is so deeply valuable to others is that you're just a natural beacon of trust.
Yeah.
And it's this, whoa, it's just so interesting to witness that journey of yours, of feeling that was pulled away from you. And now you come back around and realize you're the one who's actually offering it to the room, and that, the world can be what it is with sometimes people and circumstances who betray those things, but you're an unlimited wealth of that being just shared.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Something else I'm hearing from you too that's really interesting, that you keep talking about how you needed to step back with Dino and ask, I'm going to sit with this question. And, you're talking to him. In the book, you talk about your challenging questions and having to answer the challenging questions is the deep work. Well, what I'm hearing is there's a huge difference between the deep work and homework, that these questions can't be answered right away, that you need to sit with them, to marinate, to really let them, the questions aren't just being answered by the cerebral mind, and that you're really letting the questions get felt, and that
Yep.
a lot of time is needed. So I think that's interesting because you've created a framework for people to walk through what you've walked through and do this process for themselves. And so I
Yep.
think it's just cool to reiterate the need for time and space and
Time and
sitting with
space.
things.
Yep. That's exactly how I think about it. Time and space. And if we can get our knowing, our head, so that's my medicine alarm.
That's all right. That's
I have
great.
an autoimmune immune disease, everyone, that I have to take a
Yeah.
little bit of medicine. So I'll be doing
Oh,
that
sorry.
carefully as we're doing this.
Go
But
ahead.
yeah, that's exactly right. We do need time and space um, to do this type of work. It's not something that you can sit down and just do it. Hey, if you can, amen. But I think that's from doing the work to the deep work. I think there's a difference between those two.
Right. Well, and you certainly did the deep work here with this entire journey. So, yes, here you stand, more than just your work.
Mm,
And this you wrote in the book is a big reason why you wrote that skinny.
yeah.
So, let's just anything else with that, and anything else that concluded this journey for you that you were on, especially with Dino.
I no, just that, man, to me, I mean, think about some of the stuff we talked about. It can get pretty lonely and dark. And, you know, find resources. There's plenty of them out there to get working on this stuff. Don't It can get the best of you real quick. Um, I'm happy I'm wired and built up the skill level to address it, to know that I need to work on it. But if you're in a bad place, let's go. Give me a call, whatever. Just use one of your resources. It doesn't have to be a complex, elaborate thing of having a coach like Dino or something like that. It can be just simple talking. So, I mean, that's just the simple stuff of nobody should feel, especially entrepreneurs. You're never alone because every other entrepreneur totally relates with an entrepreneur. So just going talking to another one, you're going to be better off instantly.
Yeah. Well, entrepreneurs are looked up to so much, and we all look at them and see their value and admire so many things, but oftentimes that's not, we don't verbalize it.
Mm. Yeah.
There's that loneliness. They're in that space of their own,
Yep.
kind of at the top, and all the things that people are admiring and seeing and thinking aren't being shared. And this experience for you was at least able to get you out of your head and
Yep.
to hear some of that and to process it for yourself, so that you weren't in such a bubble by yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go talk it out with someone.
that's wonderful. Well, Dan, is there anything else you feel
I
compelled to
think
share?
the only last thing is just, is appreciation for what Dino provided me in this whole thing. It's I don't know if the word cool is the right word, but it's just so cool that you can have a 20-year friend who can be your coach and actually transact money together without losing a friendship, and yet deepen your professional relationship together, and then have this experience able to come together just out of the goodness of two people's hearts to collaborate, so that I know I'm saying, I mean, I'm the major author. This book isn't here without him. It's not here without him providing the collaboration, um, and us going through this together. So I just have a lot of appreciation, heartfelt appreciation for Dino, and he's as big a part of this as I am.
That's wonderful. I love hearing that your relationship roles were able to pivot to different
Yeah.
places and maintain strength and build new strength.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
That's beautiful. Well, and I'll share my closing appreciation to you. And
Mm,
I'm going to highlight one of your capabilities in this, that you are such a multiplier to take what you've experienced with Dino and through your life experience, the hard things that turned into revelations.
mhm.
And you're a multiplier, and you've not only just turned that into a book and a framework, but then it's now turned into a platform for
Mm,
others to be able to share their story in a compelling way. So I just think that that's wow. If there's a definition of a multiplier, there it is. You know, that's pretty cool. And look at that. You are doubling down on what you wrote on that paper. Do more.
Do
Like, how
more.
can you do more than using one of the most challenging experiences you've ever had? And how much gold are you taking now? Like, how much gold are you making from that?
Mm, so good. It's
Yeah.
still, the fire's still lit. And usually when you get older as an entrepreneur, it's like, maybe not. Maybe not. A lot of that happens because you've
Yeah.
seen so much and done so much. But now, and I'm sure it's some to do with the co-founder Ben. I think is part of the fire too, and me wanting to serve my family well. But the fire's burning, man. So there's going to be more. So do more has been incredible, incredible for me. So I'm fortunate that sheet of paper came out of the printer and she gave me a
Mm.
Sharpie.
That's amazing. Well, with
Yeah,
that final um, bit of gratitude, that brings us from the beginning of our conversation to the very end.
there we go. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this conversation,
Oh,
this
thank
sit
you.
down, Dan.
Yeah, I have a lot of love and appreciation for you as well.
Oh, God, likewise. Thank you for sharing about the book. And everybody, if you haven't already read it, and it's going to be available on May 6th, and please do read it. It is not going to take a lot of time, and it is going to have, speaking from my own experience with it, there's going to be ahas that you have in your own life because of it.
Hmm.
It's incredible. All right. That's a wrap. Thank you.